Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate, and it is cold. Oh my goodness, I woke up at 6 a.m. freezing my butt off. But, different spelling. I apologize for the lack of videos the last 2 days. But, again, I wanted to do my homework for these ones. So, next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to be talking respectively about Bella, Edward, Jacob, in that order, okay? Edward's problems in this book / these movies, we're talking about Breaking Dawn, they kind of mirror Bella's, but they're not identical to Bella's. In fact, he is a cause of many of her problems. In the first place, though, I want to talk about the difference between narrative versus meta-narrative, okay? In a book or in a movie, or generally in any piece of consumable media that you may encounter, there is what you get at face value, that's the narrative, versus what went into making what you see and the actual perspective of the creator of that media. Okay, so that's the meta-narrative. In most cases, the meta-narrative can really only be guessed at by the consumer, but the meta-narrative in this story is reasonably obvious, I would say. Again, I really can only guess, but roll with me here because I'm probably not the first person to make any of these points. So, okay, Bella, let's talk about Bella pre-vampirism first, okay? When Bella is still human in the book and in the movies, she is very much like the rest of the time in the rest of the series. The only thing in which she has agency is in her relationship with Edward. And I don't mean that she has agency over him. She has the agency to say, yes, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to get out of my life. I know that I have to finagle things out of Edward and make really unreasonable deals, you know, coming from Bella's perspective here with Edward, in order to get what I want, which is literally to spend an eternity with him. But I am going to make those deals so that I can get what I want. On the one hand, I really don't like this because, again, she gives her power away to Edward. And, you know, his conditions are marry me, firstly, and then I will vampirize you. But during the wedding, you have to allow my family basically to have their way with you. You know, like, allow Alice to make your dress for you, allow Rosalie to do your hair, you know, all this sort of stuff that I personally think a bride should have her own say or their own say over. But at the same time, while I dislike the fact that Bella has to cave into these requests, especially when it is very clear she does not want to marry Edward, because she says to him, getting married out of high school basically says you've been, well, she uses the term knocked up. I would use the term impregnated. But anyway, so she feels that if she were to marry Edward this young, her reputation would be at stake with her friends and with her human family. So that, in my mind, is a perfectly reasonable response to marry me straight out of high school. On the other hand, she does it so that she can get what she wants, as I say, but I don't really like it in terms of the fact that she's just basically being manipulative. She's only going through with this so that she can have her way. And while I applaud the fact that she's finally taking some agency over her life, it is still under Edward's rules, shall we say. He's still the one making the rules and running all the decisions. And I don't like that. You know, she's always given her power away to this man. The only way in which she has power is by doing what he wants. And we're going to get into more of that the further we go with this story. Except I have a little quibble on that one, but we'll get to that. So she marries Edward, and they go off to their honeymoon straight away. And Jacob, by the way, is well aware that they are going to try the sex thing. By the way, I should be putting content warnings all over this. So content warning verbally I'm going to give you now, but I'll also put it in the description. Jacob is well aware that they're going to try the sex thing because, hey, they're a married couple now. He's very, very, very concerned, as he should be, that Edward is going to either injure or kill Bella with his super strength, because apparently he lacks all self-control, which, yes, we have observed this in the past. Edward does not have very much in the way of self-control. Bella, however, trusts him enough not to break her, literally, when they are doing this. He does not trust himself, but he's kind of caving in and giving her what she wants because she held up her end of the bargain, okay? His end of the bargain, by the way, I ought to mention this, is that Bella said, I will marry you if, A, we can try the sex thing while I'm still human, and B, you vampirize me yourself after we get married. Her other go-to was that she would have asked Carlisle to vampirize her, but she wanted Edward to do it himself, okay? So that might be sort of a sentimental thing, but I mean, they love each other, I guess. Like I have been saying throughout this whole thing, it's a very codependent relationship. If your relationship, by the way, is based on manipulation and tit for tat, and I will do this for you only if you do this for me, regardless of how unreasonable the request seems to you, that's not healthy, okay? Relationships need to be a give and take process between both parties. Or between all parties. I mean, there are polyamorous relationships where this works too. So, Bella marries Edward. They go off on their honeymoon. Here's where the meta-narrative comes in, okay? And content warnings abound coming up, all right, for violent imagery, and also I'm going to be talking about real-world issues, such as abortion. Edward doesn't use protection when he and Bella do the sex thing, and that, in terms of the narrative, just the primary, on the surface narrative, is because he is completely unaware that a vampire can get a human pregnant. Right. Here's the thing. In the meta-narrative, okay, two things, actually. A, Edward should have been smarter than this and either done his research or just have used protection just in case, okay? That's like semi-meta-narrative, but the real part of the meta-narrative here, I think, okay, is that Stephenie Meyer is a Mormon. If she is a devout Mormon, she would be anti-birth control for either the man or the woman, okay? So in terms of using protection, in terms of the meta-narrative, she would not have wanted Edward or Bella to do this. But this gets into wider aspects of the meta-narrative that occur during Bella's pregnancy. Because after the very first go, she does get pregnant with Edward's child. And after the first time around, he injures her in several different ways and breaks a lot of furniture, leaves bruises on her body. And she still says, that was the best night of my life. Hope you enjoyed it too. And he's like, well, yeah, I did, but I hurt you. We are not trying this again. In my mind, finally, Edward is taking her safety into consideration. Yay. Because up to this point, he has been just egregiously selfish, I think, and taken her life into little consideration when it came to fulfilling his own desires. That being primarily the desire to have her in his life, regardless of how unsafe it is. I mean, okay, this man is addicted to the smell of her blood. He even calls it his own personal brand of heroin. That is in both the book and the movie. You would think that being over 100 years old, he would have more sense than this? No, right? We've discussed this. So Bella gets pregnant, obviously, and Edward had no idea that this could happen, so immediately they start freaking out. You know, Carlisle, his adopted father, he's a doctor, and unfortunately he can't run tests on the baby to see its genetic makeup, to see what sex they are, to see basically anything about the baby except that it is growing at a very, very rapid rate. And they have no medical knowledge whatsoever about how to feed the child because Bella's body, because the pregnancy is incompatible with her, Bella's body starts rejecting food and she's starving, and the baby is also growing at such a rate as to break her bones from the inside out. The baby is killing her from the inside out. And Jacob, I agree with him on this, but we will get to the baby. But Jacob says, you're basically pregnant with demon spawn here. And he hates Bella for what she is doing. And he hates Edward, obviously. He always hated Edward. And he hates the baby because the baby is killing the person that he loves. So baby's killing Bella. Jacob and Edward and Alice all want Bella to abort the pregnancy, okay? Content warning from here on out. Bella refuses, and she gets Rosalie on her side because the primary motivation for Rosalie here, she does not care about Bella's life. Rosalie wants the baby. Should Bella die, Rosalie would want to take care of the baby herself because, as we discussed in the previous episode, one of Rosalie's greatest regrets in becoming a vampire, if not the greatest regret in becoming a vampire, is that she cannot be a mother. A biological mother, okay? So, ostensibly, if Bella were to die in the pregnancy, which is highly likely, or die in the delivery, which is even more likely, Rosalie would take charge of the child, which is exactly what she wants. And Bella is probably aware that this is what Rose wants, which is why Bella enlists Rose to help her keep the pregnancy. All right, meta-narrative time here. If you are a true blue Mormon, you are also going to be pro-life. I want to make my own stance on this very clear, but just a sec. You're going to be pro-life, which means that Bella is pro-life despite all of the negative stuff surrounding this pregnancy. Number one, her relationship with Edward is crumbling to pieces. He cannot stand the baby. He cannot stand what is happening with Bella's body. He knows that the baby is killing her or is very likely to kill her in the very near future. Cannot stand the baby and wants Bella to get rid of the baby, right? But here is where the meta-narrative kicks in. Bella has agency. She, for the first time in her life, tells Edward no. For the first time in their relationship, she tells him no. I am keeping this baby. You cannot stop me, and I am going to use every manipulative tactic I have up my sleeve. I'm also going to use members of your own family against you in order to keep this pregnancy. And Edward does not like this, but he doesn't have a choice because he is so codependent with Bella that even despite the fact that the child is killing her, he's still, to some degree, willing to run with it. And I don't respect Edward, okay, at all. At the moment, though, I respect Bella because finally she is making her own choice and finally she's telling Edward no. However, meta-narrative-wise, the only reason why she has this agency is because, again, if you are a practicing Mormon, I'm not going to say this is true of all Mormons, but the conservative belief in this very conservative sect is that if you are a wife and a mother, as a biological female, those are the only ways in which you can have agency and power in your life. All right? Bella currently is both of those things, or is about to be the second. And that, I think, in accordance with the meta-narrative, is why she finally has some agency, and why she finally grows a spine and tells Edward no. All right, getting down to some differences between the book and the movie. I should save this for Edward's section, but this affects Bella too. So I'm going to go into a greater detail about this in Edward's section. But he asks Jacob to try to convince Bella to get rid of the pregnancy, and in exchange, Edward is willing to give Bella to Jacob so that she can have Jacob's babies instead. What Edward is completely failing to understand, other than basic human decency, is that it is not a pregnancy that Bella wants, okay? It is this pregnancy. It is this baby, Edward's baby. And she makes it very clear to him, I am not getting rid of this child. This is going to be my only chance to have your child, right? Even despite that, that security in her decision on Bella's part, Edward is still bartering with Jacob as though she were a piece of meat to say, let's get rid of this one and she can have your babies instead. I know you're in love with my wife, so try to convince her. And I just think it's disgusting. I should talk about this in Edward's section, and I'm going to as well, but it's repugnant the way he treats her. He's always treated her this way in one way or another. She's just basically a possession to him, okay? This is what I mean about the codependent nature of this relationship. I wouldn't say that they don't necessarily love each other, but the problem is they want to possess each other. Love, I think, is the opposite of possessiveness. And if you're going to try to possess your partner in that way, if you're going to barter their life, their well-being, their happiness, their health, in accordance with what you want for them, you are not being a good partner. Jacob is very well aware of this, and we'll get to him too, because there are issues abound with him as well in this book. But again, meta-narrative wise, Jacob gets screwed in this book. But we'll talk about that in a few days. So, Bella gives birth, and in the movie, it is the most horrific depiction of a birth I've ever seen in my life. And would not recommend this to anyone under, say, 16, 17, 18 years old. It's very, very graphic. Basically, this turned into an actual horror movie, which you think it would be with all these supernatural entities running around, but primarily Twilight is a romance. It is in the book, but not in the movie, okay? That Edward says to Jacob, you have to give me permission to save her life. In other words, after she gives birth, you have to give me permission to vampirize her, because I know that that is a violation of the treaty that Carlisle made with your grandfather or great-grandfather Ephraim Black, who was at that point the chief or the leader of the Quiliots. Jacob gives Edward permission to violate the treaty, but the thing is, in the book, not in the movie, Edward says to Jacob, you know I will do it anyway, but it makes it so much easier if I have your permission. We're going to get back to that tomorrow, okay? Put a pin in that. So, pin, there. Jacob gives Edward permission to save Bella's life, because at this point he knows that either she's going to die or she's going to be a vampire. Either way, I lose her. Either in the literal sense or in the figurative sense, right? So Jacob's like, okay, whatever. Any form of Bella around is better than no Bella around, because at this point he's still in love with her. So Bella is saved by Edward after giving birth to Renesmee, And okay, so that's her daughter. I want to talk about Renesmee, but Bella first. Bella turns into a vampire, but during the process is excruciatingly painful because the venom burns away your natural organs. It also burns all the blood out of your body. So basically, she describes it as being set on fire from the inside out. I imagine that's not a fun experience, but because she is such a masochist, I'm sorry, she is, the entire time she stays completely still and completely silent. Usually when people are transforming into vampires, they make a lot of noise. They scream, they writhe, they're in excruciating pain. But Edward is sitting right there beside her, holding her hand the whole time, and she doesn't want to cause him pain through screaming, through having a reasonable reaction to the greatest pain she has ever felt in her life. And the transformation for her, because he bites her so many times, by the way, and injects venom directly into her heart, the transformation for her lasts about 2 days. Usually this is a 3-day affair. So he shortened the window of time in which she would have to be in excruciating pain, but she literally has to count her own heartbeats and just focus on something other than the burning in order to not, drop her own cover. At this point, though, he starts to worry whether the transformation is working. And, he starts to have the opposite worries to the ones that Bella is worried about giving him. She's worried that if she were to break her cover and start screaming and, crying about it, she would cause him pain. But at the moment, she's causing him pain too by staying still because he's thinking that she's dying. So either way, you're screwed pretty much going through this transformation. But once she has transformed, okay, it kind of gets interesting because she has way more power than she did before. She also has what they describe as like super self-control. Thing is, as a human, she did not like the scent of blood at all. It made her sick. I actually share that in common with her. It's interesting because in the first book, Edward says, but humans can't smell blood. And I'm like, Stephanie Meyer, have you ever been around blood? You can smell blood if you're a human. But Bella in her human life had been repulsed by blood. As a vampire, she still desires it, but she's able to resist it. So she can be around her human family, she can be around her human friends, she can be around her daughter, who has blood in her veins, despite being much more durable than a human being. So Bella is pretty much immediately able to reintegrate into ordinary life. Um, the way that Charlie deals with this is kind of interesting, but I want to talk about that in Jacob's video because he's the one who gets that rolling. I'm also going to talk about the imprinting that we all know happened in Jacob's section. I'm going to totally skip that for now, okay? Again, put a pin in that. I'm going to have to watch this back to see how many things I put a pin in. But anyway, when Bella becomes a vampire, she goes for a hunt with Edward, and she's finally free. She's finally graceful. She's stronger than him. She's this amazing specimen of a person. And finally, you get to see Bella taking control of her own life and her own decisions. And Edward basically at this point just kind of has to hang back and say, I need to let go of my overprotective instinct for this girl. And he has a difficult time doing that. He even says when she's wrestling with a freaking mountain cat, which she has the strength to do, but he says that was very difficult to watch because every instinct I have goes into protecting you. Again, codependent relationship. It shouldn't be that way. When there is health in a relationship, there's trust in a relationship. The trust that the other person can and should look after themselves, and also that you are free to let them make their own decisions in regards to their own well-being and in regards to the life path that they want to take. So Bella does that, and then she meets her daughter. She basically doesn't have any problem with that, even though Renesmee has blood in her veins. And Bella would otherwise probably want to, drink her blood if she didn't have this super self-control. But the name Renesmee is just so ridiculous. But I think I will talk about her in Jacob's section as well. She is among my favorite characters in these books. But Renesmee is also not a character. Renesmee is a plot device. We'll talk about that in Jacob's section. Again, put a pin in it. So, the Volturi are informed that Bella is now a vampire, so they're good with that because they wanted her to be a vampire anyway. However, the whole thing about Renesmee is revealed to them as well, and they have no idea what this child could become. They also believe that this is not a half vampire, half human child. They believe, as they were informed by the informant who spots Renesmee, that she is what they call an immortal child. That is a biological child who has been vampirized. In the vampire world, that is flatly against their laws because the problem is intellectual development stops, theoretically, at the age at which you are frozen. So if you are vampirized at the age of 5, it says in both the book and the movie, a simple tantrum could destroy an entire village because the children cannot maintain the secrecy, they cannot control their own strength, they cannot control their own bloodlust, and so on and so forth. And the Volturi worry that if Renesmee is what's called an immortal child, she will be the one to break their secret. So, using that as an excuse, by the way, they go in to see the Cullens and to manufacture proof of their guilt. The problem with the Volturi is that, and Alice sees this coming, they will always claim that certain gifted members of a coven or a family have repentant thoughts because Aro, the leader, he can see your thoughts by touching your hand or whatever. He has to have physical contact to read your thoughts, but he can read every thought your mind has ever had. That's beyond Edward's capabilities, even though Edward can read from a distance. Edward can only read what's going through your mind at any given time, though, not the whole gist of everything you have ever thought. But Aro will, wink, claim to see repentant thoughts in the minds of the people in the coven that he desires. So in this case, it would be Edward and Alice, and he does not know at this point that Bella is a mental shield, but he would have wanted her to, if he had known about that. So Bella gets this shielding ability that she had even as a human. That's why Edward could not read her mind. She has this sort of mental protection that will stop all mentally oriented gifts that another vampire has from affecting her, but also from affecting other people. When the Volturi are coming, Alice gives the instructions to round up their friends from around the world, one of whom gives Bella training in how to develop her gift so that she can project the shield not only in her own mind, but also beyond her mind to protect all the other people that she cares about. This particular ability, by the way, is motivated by anger, specifically, though, by the maternal protective instinct, because the one who's training her shield has this electrical power that she can project in her hands. But she keeps shocking Edward, and Bella's trying to protect him because she can't shock Bella. This is a mentally perceived thing. It's not actually being physically done. So you perceive pain, okay, but it's not real. However, Edward's suffering is not enough to motivate Bella to get her shield very far out of her head. So I believe her name is Kate, says, let's go and get Renesmee and see if this power works on her. Bella gets super pissed off and projects her shield like out of her head completely. And Kate is like, that's the key. So they don't actually use Renesmee as a guinea pig for their experiments, but Kate figures out and Bella figures out it is the maternal protective anger that gets my shield going, that really superpowers it up. And again, in the meta-narrative, the whole idea of your maternal instinct and your maternal capacities giving you power beyond yourself, that's in the meta-narrative in this instance as well. So by the time the potential fight rolls around, Bella is very well able to project her field around her entire group, right? And this includes the wolves, by the way, because Jacob's imprintee is Renesmee, which means that his entire group is compelled to protect her. It's against the laws of the shapeshifter wolves to kill the imprintee. It's also, for their laws that they should attempt to protect the imprintee of another wolf. Doesn't matter who it is, by the way. So when Jacob imprints on Renesmee, immediately, that's the end of the war between the shapeshifters and the vampires, because they are not allowed to kill her. Which is good, but there are problems here, and we will discuss that when we get to Jacob. But yeah, Jacob and the whole pack, they're all there, and they're helping Carlisle and Bella and their side out. And that's what really knocks the Volturi off guard, because there are a lot of them, but there are a lot of Carlisle's side as well. And if they were to fight as portrayed in the movie, this is a complete and total cheat, by the way, but if they were to fight, quite a number of both sides would be knocked off. But in the movie, this is not in the book, in the movie, Aro sees himself being killed by Bella and Edward, and he refuses after that point to engage because he's a very selfish individual, and you can see just through the narrative that you get in the movie, if not in the book, but you can definitely see it in the book too, that all this guy wants is power and survival. That's it. His instincts are just basically based around those now, because he's been alive as a vampire for several thousand years, and he's also been the ruler of the vampiric world for several thousand years. So basically, he's considered royalty to these people, and he usually gets what he wants, but the problem is if he and his coven and his life, if they're being threatened, he's not going to engage, even though he could get some real trophies out of this family. He really could, because Edward has great capacities. Bella and Alice both have great capacities in terms of their gifts. He would have probably tried to get Jasper as well, because Jasper has control over other people's emotions. But I believe he may have someone on his side who can already do that, so maybe not. Can't remember. But in the movie, at least, Aro sees this vision and decides not to engage. In the book, however, he does not. And both in the book and the movie, what inevitably stops him and the Volturi from killing Renesmee and the rest of the Cullens and the wolves is that this guy, Nahuel, from South America, I believe from Brazil, he shows up. He's a half vampire, half human as well. And he articulates to Aro what he is, what his diet is like, and the fact that he grew rapidly, just as Renesmee is doing, and that he was fully matured at about the age of 7, the biological, or year-wise. In his 7th year, he reached full adult maturity. So when that happens, then Renesmee will be basically stuck in the same phase of life as the rest of them, and she will be immortal and ageless from there on in. So, good news to the family for her, bad news to the Volturi, who needed some pretense in order to attack the family and potentially to collect the people they wanted for their side. which wasn't going to happen because the Cullens and the Wolves, they would have fought back in order to prevent that from happening, as in the movie Alice's vision shows. In the book, though, really it is just Nahuel who stops this thing from going down. That and the fact that Aro sees that Bella can protect other people from the more vicious gifts of his followers. For example, Jane, she can cause physical pain to a person, but only in their mind. And Bella is able to shield the people that Jane tries that on, because that girl is vicious, both in the books, or in the book and in the movies. She does not have a very friendly streak, nor is she encouraged to, because Aro wants to use her as a weapon. And you definitely see the moral differences between the Volturi versus the Cullens, but within the family itself, these people have a lot of problems. So I'm not just going to sit here and say Cullens good, Volturi bad. Volturi bad, yes, but Cullens also bad. And basically that's Bella. No agency as a human, no agency pre-motherhood, agency post-human, and agency, well, mother. Basically, it's the meta-narrative surrounding her, as well as the bulk of the narrative itself, because all of the books have been leading up to this point. Bella even says, I did not belong as a human. I was destined to be a vampire. And I believe that to be true as well, but not for the same reasons that she does. Basically, she was destined to be a vampire because she was so insecure as a human, all right? And she had no power as a human. And that's what really ticks me off about the meta-narrative here. I do, however, like that Bella finally stands up to Edward and says, no, you are not taking my child from me. This is what I want. This is what I am going to get, so you can basically F off. Yay, Bella! Unfortunately, that comes at the cost of the meta-narrative. So, yeah, that's Bella, and I've been talking forever. So, have fun watching this one. And let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow to talk about Mr. Edward Cullen, who I really don't like in this book. All right, have a good day. Love y'all. Mwah!